let's talk about delayed gratification on this episode of Pushback.
Go, Jonny, go, go. Go, Jonny, go, go. Go, Jonny, go, go.
If you're concerned about the direction our culture is heading, then maybe it's time to push back.
Hello, my dear listeners, and welcome to Pushback. This is Dr. Jonny again, coming to you this week, as I do every week, trying to share some relevant cultural information that brings restoration to culture, because that's the role that we play here on this earth, isn't it? I'm super excited to report that we have started our Famology podcast as promised. It was released on Wednesday, September 3rd, and so far so good. We've had a few glitches, few technical issues, but we're working through all of those, and it's turning out great. My wife and I are having a wonderful time answering your questions about family, marriage, and parenting. And so I encourage you to go to gofam.org. And you can click on the Famology link and connect to all of our episodes that we started out with. Our first episode was really just about us and who we are, why we care, and what Famology is, and the format that we're going to be using. And then the next episode is us answering your questions. And so we're going to try to answer about 3 questions an episode, and we're going to have a great time doing it, and hopefully really help the kingdom, because as we help family, as family goes, so goes the culture, right? That's what we've learned here on this podcast. And so family is such a critical piece. And so as we hopefully bring health, healing, hope to families, that transforms cultures and regions. And that's really what we're after. That's our heart. It's about the message of his love for us and family that he created as the backbone that he would use, the scaffolding that he would use to reproduce his culture here on the earth. So I'm super excited to share my heart with you again this week as we're moving forward with my Pushback podcast, which is in a little bit of a different vein because I'm really digging into culture on this podcast and the things that are happening in the news and the things that are happening in real time here on this earth. I want to talk to you today about something about delayed gratification. Now, that's a term that we use when we try to look into the future, into our future self, and try to position ourselves today that would benefit ourselves in the future, versus instant gratification, which is whatever I can do to bring gratification to my life right now, that's what I'm going to do. And so those two are generally in contrast with each other often. And we are in an instant, need it now type society. There's no doubt about it. And as we move forward in life, it's tempting to always be connecting to what I can have today. I remember it was such a strange experience, and maybe I've shared this story on this podcast before, but I was in my driveway and I had a trailer. I had an enclosed trailer that was making some weird noise, and it looks like the wheel was kind of loose. And so I went underneath, and it turns out the axle was all rusted out and pretty much broken. So the trailer was pretty much rendered unusable. And I remember sitting there thinking, what do you do for a trailer axle? Because, you need to be able to measure it. You need to be able to remove it in order to bring it in someplace so that they can match it or try to find it. And where would you even go to try to find an old trailer axle? And so, of course, I went online and I went into the house, I remember, and I went on Amazon and I put in trailer axle. And of course, they had thousands of choices, and I was able to put in the serial number of my trailer. And sure enough, there was my axle. And I kid you not, it was next day delivery. And so for when I was laying on my back, looking at my rusted, broken axle, 24 hours later, I had a new axle on my trailer. And I remember this distinctly, laying on my driveway thinking, that is the weirdest experience I've ever had. It's like, it's as if I snapped my fingers and a new axle appeared, and I was able to just simply replace it with the perfect one. And it was delivered to my house. We live in an instant, need it now society. That's the way that we operate, and if we're not careful, the way that we actually think. I get frustrated. My wife will testify to this, that when we have Amazon Prime, and of course you type in your search on Amazon, and Amazon Prime will say, 2-day delivery. It'll be here by Thursday. It'll be here by Saturday. And then when it doesn't come on those days, or it's a day late or 2 days late, I just become unglued. I'm like, I paid for Amazon Prime. I paid a special fee for the privilege of getting this thing on time. And they told me the reason I ordered it, my wife will be very, very familiar with this rant. The reason I ordered it was because I knew it was going to come on Thursday. And when it doesn't come on Thursday, that's like a breach of contract, and they should be responsible for that. And the rant goes on because we need things, and we need things now. I feel like, oftentimes even when we look at culture and society and even our economics and even our politics that we have right now, we are an instant gratification society. And I believe with all my heart, that's the reason for our national debt. Our national debt, I believe, is a national crisis that we are in. And you can go to the debt calculator online and watch the numbers go up, and it creates some anxiety. It's very anxiety provoking. But I believe that politicians have turned a blind eye for the future. I remember Barack Obama saying that our national debt is a moral question. And for us to continue to raise the debt for future generations is immoral. That's the word he used. And then he went on for 8 years to become the most immoral president in the history of presidents, based on his admission that the debt was immoral. He added to the debt like nobody else. Biden did worse, and Trump did not do all that much better, honestly, as the debt continues to go up. And the reason is it's not a politically exciting play to say, I'm going to be the president that lowers the debt, that finally pays off the debt. It's instant gratification when it comes to politics. What can you do for me now? I don't care about 12 years from now that the debt is $10 trillion less than it is today. I don't care about that. I want to know what you can do for me now. It's a culture of instant gratification. And of course, the politicians play into that. That's what they do. They feel the pulse of society and they connect to that. So it's not always it's a moral move, but not always a winning political move. There was a famous marshmallow experiment, and it was done at Stanford University by a man named Walter Mischel, Mischel. And this Walter Mischel from Stanford University did a series of tests in the 1960s and 70s where a child is offered a marshmallow. Then the examiner leaves, but gives them a choice to either eat the marshmallow immediately or wait for a short period of time and receive a second marshmallow. The study suggested that a child's ability to delay gratification or wait it out was correlated with future success, academic achievement, and better health outcomes. It was an incredible finding. I've been reading a book called Dr. A's Habits of Health, and he lays out this marshmallow experiment, but also goes quite a bit deeper into what's called a fMRI. It's a functional MRI. And he writes, how we think about ourselves in the present moment and how we think about ourselves in the future is very different. We can look to the advances in neuroscience to explain these differences. How we think and act in the present and the relationship in an fMRI brain scan, a machine that measures blood flow to the specific region in the brain that is activated by thoughts or emotions. So when you think of something or have an emotion, something will light up in your brain, and they can detect that on an MRI scan. There's a particular area in the brain that has been mapped and shown to be devoted to self-reflection. When a subject is asked to think about themselves in the present tense, that precise area of the brain lights up. When they are asked to think about a stranger, non-self, the scan lights up in a very different area of the brain. Here is where it gets interesting. If volunteers are asked to think about themselves in the future and how they will perceive themselves 5 years from now, there is a wide range of responses. Most of the subject's fMRI scan lights up the same area that previously became more active when they were asked to think about a stranger. And just a few activate the area that is associated with present self. Isn't that interesting? It gets better. Those that see themselves more as strangers when asked to think about the future also demonstrated a different profile. When compared to those that connected well to the future, the stranger brain group were more likely to struggle with delayed gratification, more likely to have poor habits, and have more difficulty saving money and dealing with the challenge of modern life, such as when we are asked to delay actions to a future time. Psychologists call the phenomena temporal discounting. It explains the tendency for your brain to want to value immediate reward and devalue the importance of delaying gratification for a distant future benefit. Isn't that fascinating? It's fascinating that when we try to think about ourselves 5 years from now, it lights up in our brain as if we're talking about a stranger. Like we can't even simply connect or comprehend that that would be us, even just 5 years from now. I find that interesting. Now, this is a generalization, but I would say that this generation, the younger generation, values experience over material goods. Now, on first glance, that's not necessarily a bad thing because material goods offer no eternal value. But it also can create a culture that turns away from establishing roots and looking for the next experience as soon as money presents itself. We live experientially, and when the money is there to do it, we simply do it without activating that part in our brain that actually thinks about our future self. And this is instant gratification rather than looking to your future self. For the young, that day of saving or preparing for some future date seems to never come or could never come. And society can perpetuate this notion that we need to simply live for today and pay no attention to a future understanding or a future self. That's what that means. Galatians 6:9 says, "Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up." It requires a different mindset where we have a perseverance mindset where we're actually engaged in things in the future and see the value of our future self and what we can provide in the future, not only for us, but for the generations to come. Proverbs 21:20, "In the house of the wise are stores of choice food and oil, but a foolish man devours all he has." Proverbs 6:6-8 says, "Go to the ant, you sluggard. Consider its ways and be wise. It has no commander, no overseer or ruler, yet it stores its provisions in summer and gathers its food at harvest." It's important that we have a mindset. Now, I'm not going to sit here at this podcast and give you financial advice and tell you the ways to prepare for your financial future and retirement. That's not what this is about. Dave Ramsey is an excellent resource, and I encourage you to check all that he has for financial advice. But I'm speaking more toward the cultural mindset of generational thinking. And I believe that parents, it always comes down to me speaking to parents, parents need to parent, and they need to instill the value for the future and future generations. It's a mindset. It's a culture that's actually created in the homes, in Christian homes, where we think about the value of what we are storing for later. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't run hard for what he has for us today. Just the opposite. It's a both and. We take what he has for us, and he always gives us provision for the things that he's called us to. But he also wants us to think generationally and value the birthright of who we are so that we don't become Esau, where we sell the things that are ours for a bowl of soup because I'm hungry now and I need food now. Instant gratification. We want to be Jacobs who see and value the future and see the importance of the birthright and what he was born into, so that there is a momentum that is carried from generation to generation to generation. See, a generational mindset is not only the healthiest culture, which I believe it is, but it actually is culture. What do I mean by that? The definition of culture is the sum total ways of living, now listen, passed down from generation to generation. It's not just the sum total ways of living. There's a second clause to the sentence. Passed down from generation to generation. That's what culture is. That's the definition of culture. And so we actually not only carry it, culture it, steward it, but we actually pass it down from generation to generation. So it's the healthiest culture, but it actually is culture. And this is my call in this podcast. This is why this is so important to me, is that I believe that a generational mindset is the core, or is the essential piece of the survival of culture. Because you may say, well, there's just all different types of culture, and why do we have to do your culture? Why do you think your culture is better than my culture? Well, I believe that there can be culture, and then there can be a culture, like absence of culture. Like we can just remove culture by just simply living for today, having just a today mindset, not storing up the provisions in summer. When we have a generational mindset, we are actually creating culture. That's what's passed down. That's what's so important. And when we have nothing to pass down, when we burned it all, when we're just living for today, when we're just waiting for enough money for our next experience, then we're actually losing the mindset of what actually culture is. So I'm compelling parents, I'm compelling all of those of this next generation, even our generation, to be thinking about future generations. That includes politicians and the national debt. That includes my life and what I'm handing down to my children, not just financial provisions, although that's part of it, but also spiritual and emotional and generational cultures that I pass down to my children and to my children's children. It's a beautiful mindset. And that's the healthiest mindset. So maybe today, even just a real practical prophetic act is that we start putting a little bit of money away. Money isn't everything. That's not what it's all about. But it's a mindset that we can think about the future. We can think about freeing our time even for the things that the Lord has called us to or is calling us to. And certainly inheritances that we can pass to generations so that we can build even familial wealth, generational wealth, it's called. I believe we can be wise, as the Bible says. It's wisdom that we set things aside for the future and that we have a future mindset. Thanks for listening again this week. It's always my pleasure to share my heart with you. Hopefully you feel my passion about all of these cultural topics. And it's so important that we continue to be the voice, be the one in the center of the town square that shouts and gets noticed and gets listened to. Would you join me in that as we go forward with Pushback? Hey, go to pushbackculture.org, pushbackculture.org. That's where you can connect with me, leave your questions, comments about this episode or future episodes that you would love to hear. Thanks for connecting with me again this week, and I look forward to connecting with you again next week. So let's go together now to set and shape the culture.